What is up, world? It's your boy Ton, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. Welcome back, you filthy animals. Hope you guys had an awesome Merry Christmas, hanging out with family, all that shit. Hopefully Santa gave you everything you wanted, but coal, anything but coal. This week we're going to continue our convo on the 12-week year, and the next part of this is going to be about the 5 disciplines of execution. There's actually a book out there called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is a badass book if you ask me, but in the 12-week year, they highlight 5 disciplines. We're going to go through them today. So the 5 disciplines of execution, this is essentially the engine. It's the 5 disciplines that you're going to run every 12-week cycle. Remember, your 12-week is your year now. You're going to redefine how you think, and then the 13th week is where you reset, hopefully celebrate, and then figure out your goals for the next 12-week cycle. The first discipline is vision. You got to make it vivid and near term. Again, there's a book out there called Vivid Visions by, I can't remember the author, it's Cameron something, but it walks you through creating a vivid vision, a really badass vision of how you look in the future after you've achieved your goals, etc. But again, for this one, you want to make it vivid and you want to make it near term. Pull this into the present with me for 60 seconds. If you're not driving, close your eyes. It's 12 weeks from today. Date stamp that date in your mind. Think about a couple things, right? Think about, where are you sitting? What does done feel like in your body? Do you have lighter shoulders? Is your breathing a little bit steadier? Or is it just a complete opposite? What are the 3 wins you can point to that would make you so fucking proud? Now from there, let's build it out into 3 layers. Long term, let's think about 5 to 10 years out. This is essentially your North Star. It's your guiding light. It's not a spreadsheet, but it's an identity. Who are you becoming? A mentor, a founder, an artist, or a parent with energy at 6 p.m. or 3 a.m., whichever? What does great look like in your career? What does your health look like? What does your wealth look like? And what about your relationships? And what does that impact? Okay, now let's get a little bit more granular. From that 5 to 10 year vision, let's bring it down to 3. We're going to bring it in closer. What is your role? What about your revenue? How do you spend time with your family? How do you spend time in your free time? How do you spend time with your colleagues or your employees? What habits do you have now? Which habits are crucial to your well-being? Now let's bring it in even closer. We're going to look at 12 weeks now. What will be undeniably true at the end of these 12 weeks? Make it specific enough that a stranger could literally verify it for you. Now you write down your 12-week vision in present tense. Something along the lines of, it's whatever date, I have done a specific outcome, and I have a specific habit, and I feel happy. Something along those lines. And so as an example, it would be, okay, it's March 31st, the new offer is live, I have 5 ideal clients onboarded, and I'm lifting 3 times a week. I feel focused, and I feel proud. Something along those lines. And here's actually a pro tip for you. Record yourself reading that vision and play it during one of your first strategic blocks each week. And again, we'll go through the strategic blocks and whatnot in a little bit. But for now, again, record yourself reading that vision and play it during your strategic block. The future you will become a voice you've already met. It's kind of like mind hacking, if you will. Okay, the next discipline, this is planning. It's essentially 1 to 3 objectives that are keystone actions only. Planning is choosing what not to do. You get 1 to 3 objectives in a cycle maximum. Then you identify the keystone actions, which are the smallest set of repeatable behaviors that create outsized results. And here are 2 example plans that you can borrow. So if you have a business out there, let's say your business growth goal is adding, again, $30,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Here could be some of your keystone actions. 2 90-minute partnership outreach blocks weekly with calendar slots in your calendar. Or 1 webinar or live demo in week 4 or 5. Or a daily 30-minute follow-up block on warm leads. Or 2 sales demos per week. What's not allowed is vague shit like work on sales. If you can't schedule it, it's not a keystone action yet. Another example could be something around your health and your energy. You might want to rebuild your energy. You might want to drop, call it 8 to 10 pounds. Some of those keystone actions that you would do would be something along the lines of 4 workouts a week. 2 days of those, I would do strength exercises, and the other 2 would be cardio. Or I'm going to have protein with every meal that's roughly a hand-sized serving. Or 8,000 steps a day on average. Or Monday through Friday, I'm not going to drink any alcohol, which is probably really hard for me, but to each their own. So for all of your actions, you want to do a little bit of a sanity test. Are your actions, ask yourself, is it weekly and observable? Ask it, can I put it on the calendar? Or would a friend know if I did it? If you can't say yes to all 3 of those questions, you have to refine your action. That would mean that action is not a keystone action and it's a bullshit action. When you're in doubt, make the action smaller, but the frequency higher, because consistency is going to beat intensity in these 12-week sprints 10 out of 10. The third discipline here is called process control. We're going to build rails so that execution is going to be our default. Process control is how the plan is going to survive week after week. So an example of this cadence would be having a weekly planning ritual. Call it Friday at 5 p.m. or Sunday evening at 5 p.m. One of those times or whatever. It's flexible and customizable to you. Remember that. So the weekly planning could be 15 minutes, could be 20 minutes. So the first step would be for you to review your last week's scorecard. Then you're going to move any unfinished keystone actions to the following week, only if they still matter. Then you're going to calendar in your keystone actions first. And then you're going to fit your life around those keystone actions, not the other way around. And you want to script this into your week. You're going to tell yourself every Friday or every Sunday at 5 p.m., I'm going to open my scorecard. I'm going to look at the facts. I'm going to lock next week's keystone actions into my calendar, and I'm going to fucking do them. That's what you're going to tell yourself. The next trick here is what's called a daily top 3. You're going to ask yourself, what 3 actions done today are going to move my 12-week goals the most? Write them down. Do the first one inside your morning strategic block. On your scorecard, we want to track the completion as a percentage, and we want to aim for 80 to 85%. I think within the book, it says that if you get at least 85%, you're going to achieve your goals inevitably. If you're below that threshold, you have to make your actions smaller, not your ambition. Keep your ambition as high as fucking possible, but shrink your actions. Again, we're going to talk about accountability. You have to keep yourself accountable, or you have an accountability partner. And this is just a 5-week session where you look at the scorecard, assess yourself to see whether or not you completed your task or not. Or if you have an accountability partner, tell them what you did, what you didn't do, what your results were, and what you're going to do to change that. For example, one day could have 6 keystone actions. Maybe you completed 5 and your score is 83%. All you have to do is think about that, figure out how to fix that, or that could be a message to your accountability partner. You could say, you had a win, you fixed a webinar, or you completed an outline, or then you could say, this is what I fixed. I fixed some follow-ups earlier in the day. I had another conversation with a broker or a lead, things like that. Or I'm going to change my calendar to revolve around this a little bit more. To each their own. You want to keep it factual and not emotional. Remember, data over drama. The fourth discipline is measurement. We're going to talk about lead versus lag measurements. So what are lead and lag measurements? Lead measures are predictive and influenceable. They're going to track behaviors that drive results, things that you still control this week. Lag measures, on the other hand, are results-based and historical. They happened in the past. They're going to tell you what happened after the fact. And here's a simple way to think about it. Lead measures are like your windshield, the road ahead. You're staring forward. Whereas the lag measures are going to be like your rearview mirror. It's the road you've already traveled. And here are some examples. Let's say in sales. Your lead measures could be qualified outreaches, or how many demos you scheduled, or how many follow-ups you sent. Whereas a lag measure is how much revenue have you booked and what your close rate is. Maybe that's a little bit complicated. Let's go to another example. Let's go with fitness. A lead measure would be workouts completed, how many steps, how many grams of protein or servings, or how many hours you sleep. Whereas a lag measure would be your weight, your body fat percentage, or your race time. Because those things would happen after your keystone action has already been completed. When you look at your scorecard, it should be 90% lead measures. Make the behaviors visible and the decisions get simple. Either you did the work or you fucking didn't. If a lag measure is off, you have to go upstream and adjust the leads. And here's a little mini, call it troubleshooting loop that you can try. If you miss your outcome, don't set a bigger outcome. You have to go back, you have to increase or refine your lead behaviors. If your lead behavior is too hard, cut that in half and raise the frequency. And now the last discipline is time use, which we have alluded to before, are time blocks that protect the work. And your biggest tool here is your calendar. Within your calendar, you're going to use 3 block types. The first one is called a strategic block. That is going to last roughly 90 minutes to 120 minutes. This is where you have deep work on your number one objective. Your doors are closed, your phone's off, all that bullshit is outside. You are just with yourself, kicking ass. There's no notifications. You have not a shit ton of tabs open on your computer. One tab, and that's it. You're going to start with a verb. For example, it could be draft, webinar, outline, instead of just webinar. It's essentially where you plan out what you're going to do for the week. The next block is called a buffer block. This is 30 to 60 minutes. This is a block where you can handle admin shit like emails, some text messages, or your intercommunication with your team. It is where you contain all the chaos so it does not leak into your strategic time. And then you have a breakout block, which is roughly 2 to 3 hours per week. It could be, some type of recovery where you go on a long walk, or you work on a hobby, or you spend time with people who essentially refill your battery. Rest is typically not a reward, but it's an input. So each of these blocks are roughly daily outside of the breakout block, which is, again, 2 to 3 hours per week. But you can break those up to many small chunks throughout the week. And here's a sample agenda that you can follow. Like, call it, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 9 o'clock to 11. That would be your strategic block. That's where you're getting shit done. Only your work, deep work on your number one objective. That's all you're doing. Then from 11 to 12, this is where you have your buffer block, where you are handling, again, all the admin shit, emails, messages, whatever, phone calls, etc. Then so since we covered Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, now let's look at Wednesday. On Wednesday afternoon, we'll have a breakout block. That's where, again, the breakout block is where you are in recovery. You're doing something you love that refills your battery. And you can set up boundary scripts too. So if people call you a lot, you can have a voicemail that says, like, I don't know, I'm heads down on a strategic block right now from 9 to 11. I'll reply afternoon. then just hold the line. So for me, I don't follow this specifically. I think each day, having it done on a daily basis is phenomenal. And I think the breakout blocks should be a little bit longer. I think it should be 5 hours a week instead of the 2 to 3 hours per week that the author of the book mentioned. I think you need that. I think you need the recovery more than you know. That is kind of a reward in my eyes to keep you going. So my sample schedule for me specifically is that I only set a strategic block of 120 minutes once a week versus every day. And I do this because I like to plan out a week at a time. I usually am pretty good with following what I need to do on a weekly basis with just one strategic block. Now, granted, every single day that I am working, my mornings are usually mine. And I also have a smaller, condensed strategic block every morning. So, I'll wake up super early and I kind of follow my routine of the miracle morning. And after that, I essentially write down everything that I have to get done for that day and I tackle it to-do list style. That's my system and it has worked really well for me. Buffer blocks are usually after I get all my stuff done, and that can vary. So I like to do it after noon because, again, the mornings are mine up until noon. After noon, I start handling all the stupid shit that came in for that day. And then the buffer blocks is usually for me after dinner. So after dinner, I take, probably an hour or maybe even 2 hours to kind of decompress and get my mind right, ready for bed so that I can restart everything the next day. Again, it's all very customizable and it really depends upon your discipline, how disciplined you are in keeping everything structured. For me, I'm a pretty disciplined person, so I don't have to follow everything by the book and I can customize it to my schedule, how I work best. The next section of the book talks about the emotional cycle of change. Change isn't linear. It's really a loop. And here's how it usually feels. It starts with uninformed optimism, like, this is going to be amazing. And then it leads into informed pessimism. For example, oh shit, this is work. And then it goes into a valley of despair. As an example, why did I think I could do this? Like, what the fuck was I thinking? Then that leads into informed optimism. As an example, it's working because I'm getting better. And then eventually, success. I did it. Most people quit in that valley of despair. So the survival kit that you're going to need is to, again, shrink the task, but keep the cadence. You're going to tell yourself, I don't skip, I shrink. If 60 minutes in the gym, call it, is too long, too heavy, do 10, do 15. I don't know. Cut it in half or cut it all the way down to something more manageable. If 20 phone calls a day is just downright impossible, do 5. You're going to shrink the task, but you're going to keep the cadence and keeping that habit alive. Or a trick is you can stack with a trigger. Let's say you have coffee every morning. So after coffee, I'm going to do 25 minutes of outreach. Or if you have kids, after I drop off the kids, I'm going to draft for 20 minutes. You're going to stack an action to a habit that you already have. You want to try to remove the friction the night before. Like, for example, if you are going to the gym, if you go to the gym early in the morning, you want to set out your gym clothes or even go to bed in your gym clothes. Pick your workout. Or if you are doing sales the next day, preload your lead list or outline the segment that you're going to record. Things like that. If you remove the friction at 9 p.m. at night, it's going to turn into execution that you're going to bank at 9 in the morning. Or sometimes you can borrow belief from someone else. Text your accountability partner, text your mom, your dad, I don't know. Text them every morning. Telling them, I got one commitment today. I'm going to do 10 burpees or I'm going to spend 30 minutes in the gym, whatever the hell that is, and I'll report back at 4 p.m. Report either way. Whether you do it or you don't, just report it. Remember, you're keeping yourself accountable as well as your accountability keeping you accountable. Integrity is going to continue to grow that loop. Visit your 12-week vision often. Reread it. Even when you don't fucking feel like it, say it out loud. Read it to somebody. Have them read it to you. Fill the gap and then close it with one small action. Again, remember, you have to celebrate your effort as well. And you have to train your own identity. For example, saying, I am someone who shows up. Outcomes are going to lag behind the person that you're becoming. Do a little bit at a time. Make it more bite-sized. The more bite-sized it is, the more manageable it is, the easier it is going to be for you to accomplish it. And from there, you can grow the intensity or the size of it. And you can also give yourself a rule when you're in the valley of despair, like what we were talking about. Give yourself a rule when you're in there. Like, for example, give yourself a 2-day rule. You're never going to miss twice. If you miss one day, fine, whatever. But the streak restarts tomorrow. I'm not going to fuck up tomorrow. Or give yourself a 5-minute rule. If it's something you can do in 5 minutes, do it. Complete it. You're not going to fail within that valley. Form the identity of you being able to keep that commitment and holding the result. So, to recap the 12-week year, we're going to do this together. You're going to grab a pen, you're going to grab a piece of paper, and we're going to do this in real time. Step 1, you're going to define your 12-week vision. It takes a minute or two, right? Remember our exercise there. Looking at it long-term and reverse engineering. Your prompt is going to be, it's whatever date that's 12 weeks out. I have accomplished your first outcome. I have a habit of whatever, and I feel a certain emotion. That is your prompt. Write that one sentence for your career, write another one for your health, for your energy, and then write another one for your relationships. And then step 2, you're going to choose 1 to 3 goals. Remember to make them measurable for those 12 weeks. An example would be, I will ship version 1 of my course and enroll 10 students. Or I will run a total of 100 miles. Or I'm going to book 16 sales. Something along those lines. The third step is where you pick your weekly keystone actions. You're going to have roughly 3 to 7 actions total. And here are some examples for you. You could have 2 90 minutes of outreach blocks. You have a daily 30-minute follow-up, 2 demos each week for a health. For, let's say, a fitness example would be 4 workouts per week, 8,000 steps per day, or protein with every meal. So those within the week, you're going to have to get granular and make it and turn it into a daily task for however your week looks. Step 4, we're going to schedule focus blocks. Put 3 strategic blocks on next week's calendar by name. You're going to add a daily buffer block and 1 breakout block this week. Remember, your strategic blocks are going to be 90 to 120 minutes. And you need 3 of those in a week. And your buffer block is pretty much daily, 5 times a week. And then those are roughly 30 to 60 minutes. And your breakout block, you only get roughly 2 to 3 hours within the week. Remember to tell yourself that these blocks are non-negotiable. They're set in stone, and everything else in your life is going to revolve around those blocks. The next step you want to do is set up your scorecard. You want to make a simple table with the week's date across the top and then each keystone action down the side. At the end of the week, you want to tally your percentage up. Again, your goal here is to make it at least 85% and better. And the last step here, you want to book your weekly review. Put it in your calendar, whatever day. It could be Friday, could be Sunday, 5 p.m., 4 p.m., whatever it is. Review and plan. And you want to repeat this on a weekly basis. Again, I have my notes on this book that I'm happy to share with somebody. I also have my own 12-week scorecard template that measures your tasks for you and also gives you a percentage within Excel. I can share that with you as well. Please reach out to me if that is something you're interested in. And if you just started with me in that little recap there, if you started doing or writing down or at least thinking about what you're going to do, you've already done more than most people do in January. Momentum loves clarity. The truth is, guys, most people overestimate what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in 12 focused weeks. Your resolutions are just hope. They're just wishes. The 12-week year actually executes. So let's lock this in. Tonight, write your 1-paragraph, 12-week vision in present tense. Pick your 1 to 3 goals and your 3 to 7 keystone actions that actually move them. Put your strategic blocks on next week's calendar by name. And if this episode gave you a shot of clarity and just some motivation, which is what I'm striving for, share it with a friend who's ready for a clean slate and ready to make shit happen. Next time, we can dig deeper into the tools. Maybe I'll dig into another book. You guys have to let me know what you guys are looking for. Reach out to me on social media, IG, LinkedIn, what have you, or leave a review. Actually, please leave a review. I need to know how I'm doing because I'm tailoring this to you guys. Happy fucking New Year, and I'll see you again next year. And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.